Awesome.
How's the conference treating you so far?
It's good. I've been hearing a lot of pitches from people, so it's been pretty great.
Awesome.
A lot of questions.
Incredible. Hey, everyone. We are back. Just give us a quick shout in the chat if you can see us.
If anyone can see us.
Yep. Before we dive in, I just want to quickly introduce everybody to Debbie. We've worked with Debbie to do some trainings in the past. Rachel's like, thumbs up. Jody's all good. Samba says hi. So yes, people are back. I'm sure everybody was taking a quick break. I'm so excited that Debbie's here. Thank you, Debbie. I'm really excited for this talk because a lot of the stuff we've been talking about earlier today has been all about the growth side of things in terms of like audience building, growing, leveraging social media. But now I really kind of want to get into like, now for the serious podcasters, this is something that they, a lot of people love podcasting and they would love to be doing it as a full time, right? And so now how do you actually turn this into a living, right? And a lot of people think it's just like, hey, once you're big enough, you sell ads and that's how you make a living. But I think you've kind of flipped that model upside down and you realize, hey, the biggest value you have as a podcast host is actually your audience. And you can leverage that in a few different ways. And it's not just as cut and dry as just like advertising. There's a lot of different kind of avenues that you can leverage for revenue and income and turn this into your full-time job. So with that, I would love to hand it over to Debbie to talk about this incredible topic. Debbie's going to be talking about this for the next 30 to 40 minutes. And then again, as questions come up, please put them in the chat. We will, at the very end, we will look at the chat and that is how we will basically pick out questions for our Q&A. And then right before I actually hand it over to Q&A, I want to hand off our third raffle prize and we'll send that over to Rob Thomas. Hey, congratulations. You're the winner of our third $25 Amazon gift card. Shoot us an email at hi@tryvirtually.com to deem that. And we have one more raffle prize, the Descript grand prize. And so that we will be sending out, we'll be announcing the winner for that in the next talk. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, cool. Debbie, take it over. Let me know if you need me. I'll be in the chat.
Perfect. Thanks, Ish. Congratulations to Rob. You won. That's amazing. So, hey, guys, thank you so much for being here and for being present. I am really excited to be sharing all of the things that I've learned on how to create multiple streams of income as a podcaster. So we're going to be talking about making moolah for your show. So here we go. So to introduce myself before we get to all of the tips and tricks that I'm going to give you, my name is Debbie, and I am the founder of The Offbeat Life, which is a podcast and a website that helps people become remote entrepreneurs and digital nomads. So this is a really interesting time to be a digital nomad and a remote entrepreneur, especially I'm sure you've all seen the news of the coronavirus. So it's pretty interesting that I'm okay with staying at home. I'm still creating income with my podcast and all of these other things that I'm doing. So yay for those remote workers. And why am I teaching you guys how to monetize a podcast? So just to tell you a little bit about me is I started in 2017, and within 8 months of launching, I achieved my first 5-figure month as a podcaster. I didn't even know how to make money from this. It was just a passion project for me. I knew I wanted to do something creative. I was at a job that I really didn't like. And then all of a sudden, it just came to me. My fiance at the time was really into podcasting, and I just knew that it was what I needed to do. And within 6 months, I had brands come up to me and literally offering me money and asking me, how can I give you money to advertise the product that we have? And I also, because of this, now I travel the world. I quit my job. I'm doing this full time. So I'm a full-time content creator, podcaster, and I travel the world getting paid to create content for podcasting. And I also write and do photography. So it's pretty incredible once you actually are living out your own dream. And the last thing is, I know what it's like to struggle to earn your first dollar as a creator. It's really hard for us to get to that stage because most of the time we're just thinking about how to create things and not really about how to make this more sustainable. And that's really what I'm going to tell you guys today is I know you love creating, for those of you who are creators, but it's another thing to make this more sustainable. So we want to get you to that point where you can actually create income and do what you love and also make money from it. So you can do this for the rest of your life if you want to. Does that sound good? I don't know. I can't see the chats. She'll, I'll, hopefully I'm talking to some people. But so a little bit more about me. I've been featured in Forbes, NBC, Travel and Leisure, Yahoo, Brit & Co, Refinery 29. She knows all of those different places for my travel and podcasting expertise. So I've really carved out a niche for myself in the travel podcasting and travel industry. And people took notice of that. And I get featured, every few months. I mean, literally within 3 weeks of this year, just the last 3 weeks, I was featured in Forbes 2 times. So that's another thing, is your visibility also matters in terms of how the brands will see you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Now, I talked about this a little bit ago. So how I started podcasting, I was unfulfilled. I needed a creative space. And one of the things that I really got out from podcasting, because I didn't know I could create income from it, was I really learned a lot from the experts that I was actually interviewing on my show. So that's another thing, right? Even in the beginning, when you're not creating income yet, there's still something that you're getting from this, right? You can literally go up to your dream mentor, ask them to go on your show and ask them all the questions that you wish to know, everything you want to know, and they're going to be there pretty much coaching you. So this was one of the pivotal moments in my career as a podcaster, is because I had all of these different amazing mentors who taught me how to be a remote entrepreneur, who taught me how to negotiate, how to pretty much create income from what I love to do. And little did I know that within a year and a half, I would make podcasting a huge part of my business, and it allowed me to have the freedom that I really never had before. And since starting the podcast, I've been able to get paid to travel the world and talk to leading experts. And I worked with companies like Johnson & Johnson, Olympus, luxury brands, and so much more. Right? So now I'm living I live the dream of, becoming a location independent entrepreneur, and I have complete freedom because of it. So I'm super thankful that I found this medium because of this. My friends, by the way, these pictures, my friends were making fun of me when I was taking this photo, because they were like, oh my God, you're so weird. Why would you have your laptop on the road? I'm like, this is going to look really good on the websites. And what do you know? It makes sense, right? Traveling on the road and working. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about, which was one of my biggest hurdles before I actually created income from this, was changing my mindset, because the biggest roadblock that I had was really myself. And I feel like a lot of you will probably resonate with this, is we often think that because it's something that we really love, we can't create income from this. And I had to get out of that mindset to really get to where I was actually able to make income from it. And, make sure that you're not measuring success against other people's, because comparison is definitely going to be a killer for your motivation and passion. So if you keep looking at Instagram, even with us here, when you're looking at us and what we're doing, remember, we've been doing this for a few years or for a little while. So we had to struggle through everything to get to this point. And to tell you the truth, I failed 3 businesses before I got to the point where I am today, is because of all the failures that I had. So don't be fooled by how everyone's telling you how great they are. Even with me, like, oh, I was featured here. It's all BS. Like, it's really all the hard work that will lead you there. So you can do this, and anyone can do it. And also take every advice that we give you with a grain of salt, because just because it works for me or for the other podcasters doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So what you need to do is to take action and experiment, and you really need to find out what's going to be the right results for you. So I'm going to be sharing with you different ways to create income and monetizing, but it's up to you to actually take action, right? Because what could work for me may not work for you. Now that's up to you, and that's where the work really starts. And really, don't let doubt and fear stop you from taking the next steps, because I think that's what stops us, especially in the beginning, or even when we're about to make a really huge transition with our business or with our life, is we're afraid to do something. So don't let that stop you. And the biggest thing that I can tell you is your podcast will always be a hobby until you make money. So if you want your podcast just to be your hobby, that is perfectly fine. I think that's great. It's a really great platform to just share your message. But if you want to do this full time, you want to monetize it, right? Because you can't eat out of just likes or whatever. You need to make sure that you're making this more sustainable for yourself, because at the end of the day, if you want to make this into a business, you have to feed yourself, you have to feed people who are assisting you making this, and then also it's just not going to be sustainable if you're not creating income from it. And then what we're going to be covering today are obviously different ways to monetize your podcast, the importance of learning how to negotiate in order to close the deal. This is the key, everyone. I've seen so many podcasters that have like 100,000 times more downloads than I do, and they're making less than me. And you know why? It's because they don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to ask for what they deserve. And I'm also going to share with you how to get brand sponsorships as a podcaster. And many consider this as one of the hardest ways to create income. And this is actually how I make most of my money aside from digital products. And also how to earn more income through content creation. So this is what we're really going to be focusing on today. And also make sure you stick around, because unfortunately we only have a limited amount of time and I can't share with you all of my tips. So make sure to stay till the end to find out how I can help you create a profitable podcast, because we all want that. So before we dig deeper into it, know your why. This is so important. People say this all the time, but it's so crucial. Before we begin, we have to really talk about that. Why are you doing this podcast? Like, who is your ideal guest and your ideal listener? Why are they listening? And what are their pain points? How can you solve their issues, right? Now, whether to inform or entertain, you have to know why and who you're really releasing the show for. And if you don't know that answer, then you're not going to know what to give them, right? Whether it's talking to brands and telling them, this is my audience, this is what they're going to need. That's why your brand and your product is perfect. Whether you're selling a merchandise, how are you supposed to sell something to someone if you don't know what they want? So if you want to take a minute, let's take a few seconds for you to write that down. And then later on, I want you to share it. Or if you want to share it now, that would be great. And that's a really great way for you to mull that over. Because if right now you're about to write it down and you don't know what to write, then there's something missing there. Now, why is this important, right? if you know your audience, obviously I spoke about this. Sometimes I get ahead of myself because I get really excited. Yeah. So you have to know your audience because you have to know what the brands are going to be taking out from you, right? So it has to be a win-win for everybody, whether you're working with brands, whether you're working with clients who wants merchandise, digital products, you have to know what exactly needs to be put out. Now, let's do different ways to monetize your podcast. First thing is merchandise. Obviously, this is pretty self-explanatory. This is a really great way for you to monetize if you have a dedicated audience who wants to wear and use your merch. So t-shirts, pens, whatever it is that you can think of and put a logo in. If you have this dedicated audience, you're definitely going to be selling that, right? And also, again, ask your audience. I always say this, ask. You have to ask them first. Maybe do an email, maybe do a survey, make sure people are actually wanting this from you. Get a poll together. If you have a Facebook group, ask them there. Because the reason why I say that is the downside to having merch is you're going to need inventory, right? You need to put up the money to create the products. And of course, you have to learn how to drop ship and so forth. So this can be a real headache, and it can cost a lot of money if you have all of this inventory and you don't know what to do with it. And also, even if you don't have inventory, I know there's some websites right now that can do it per product. It's also really costly. So make sure that, again, you're asking if this is what they really want. Another thing that's really popular with a lot of podcasters is the coaching business. Now, if you like to coach people, even on your show, give advice, you have information from your guest, and they have all of these different things that you can package into a coaching business, and people see you as an expert in that niche, then this is a really great way for you to be able to leverage your expertise in order to reach the people that need your help. Right? And this is a kind of service that you don't necessarily need a lot of people to download your show. You don't need to have a lot of audience in order to create income from this. It could just be 1 or 2 people that you're charging, and all of a sudden you have this incredible business, and then the word of mouth comes through, and you have a coaching business just from your podcast. You know, people come to me all the time and ask me how they can do this. And I have clients actually to help them start the podcast because of my podcast, or how can they work remotely, and people reach out to me. I don't even have to go to them. The podcast is a way for them to be able to reach you without you, always gunning to find your next client for that. So also, besides your podcast, I'm sure you also have your social media and website. Make sure you mention that there, because also another thing is, if they don't know you're offering this, then they're not going to know, if they want to have you coach them. So make sure you mention on your show, on social media, and your website, and any other outlet that you have. So make sure, you don't want to keep it quiet. You want to make sure that everybody knows what you're doing and what you're offering. The next thing is Patreon. I've been seeing more and more of podcasters do it. I don't do it personally. So having a Patreon, if you don't know what this is, it means you're asking your audience to donate money in order for you to keep your podcast going. And I've known several podcasters who have been doing this successfully because they have a really dedicated audience who want to make sure that what they're saying is going to keep going, right? Because they want to make sure that they want to keep the show going. And some of those podcasts don't have a lot of audience either, but they make money from it, from these dedicated people that want to keep listening to their show. So you can do different things with it. You can either just have it on your website, mention it on your show that you have a Patreon. And then one of the things that I find really great and interesting is one podcaster do when they offer the tiers. So for example, I'm showing it to you here. There's like tier 1, donate $10 and get a thank you. So this is just like a example of what you can do as well. Tier 2, donate $25 and get a thank you and an ebook. Tier 3, donate $50 and get a thank you and an ebook and a t-shirt. So you also want to incentivize them, and it'll just keep going. These numbers may not be correct because your t-shirt will probably be like $20 and you don't want to also spend too much money on merch. So these are just examples. So you want to make sure that if you're doing this, you have that dedicated audience. And you never know, you can try different things to see what type of ways you're monetizing works for your audience, because every podcast is also different. So again, what can work for me may not work for you. And digital products. I love digital products. Digital products are, of course, ebooks, e-courses, audiobooks, and so forth. Anything where you don't need to have inventory or a physical merchandise. Now, after brand sponsorships, which is pretty much my main bread and butter, digital products are my favorite ways to monetize. And one frequently asked questions that I get and see on podcasting groups is how to monetize your show when you don't have a ton of listeners yet. And I think digital products are a great way to do that when you're first starting out, and also coaching. It's not expensive to do, and you can start selling right away. If you want to dive into like Facebook ads, that's a really great way to do it as well. And obviously mentioning it on your show, on your website, again, your platform. So you're probably going to see some similarities here with everything that I'm telling you. Is make sure that people know you are offering these things, right? Because if they don't, again, how are they going to know to get it from you? Okay, now, brand sponsorships. This option is what most podcasters really want. This is kind of like the holy grail for a lot of podcasters, for a lot of people, because they want to monetize their show. But very few actually get to a point where they can monetize with sponsorships, because we often get told that we need hundreds of thousands of downloads in order to get to that point. But with me, I started my podcast before I even hit 3,000 downloads. Within 6 months, I didn't even have 3,000 downloads a month. And I was getting offers from brands. I didn't reach out to them. They started reaching out to me. And now I left my day job a year and a half after I started my podcast. And now I do this full time. And 70% of my income comes primarily from brand sponsorships, right? While the rest is consultations, mentorships, and digital products. The reason why I love this type of monetization is, first, I knew I didn't want to deal with inventory. So maybe later on, but for me, it's not right now. And I wanted to be location independent and remote. Right. And so storing and shipping while I'm traveling is really difficult. And of course, you can pay someone to do that, but it just didn't make sense for me and what I wanted my business and myself to be in. And another thing is that it allows you to monetize your creation and passion, which is extremely rewarding, and people are paying you to do that. So even right now, I'm in a hotel, and I am here because of my podcast, right? So this is not me just telling you, oh, you can do this. This is me actually living it. And this is why I don't think you should be scared of looking into brand sponsorships. I think anybody can do it as long as you're very strategic with it. So here are a few ways that you can find the brand deals. Make a list. And this is actually how I kept on creating income. So when I started the podcast, and within 6 months, like I was telling you, they came to me, right? But I knew that it had to be more sustainable. And I knew that these brands were just not going to keep coming up to me. I thought maybe it's a fluke. It is, you have the imposter syndrome once that stuff starts to happen. So what I started to do are some of the things that I'm going to tell you. So the first thing that I did, because I didn't want this to just be luck or a fluke, is I made a list of the companies that I was currently using, or I'm still currently using, or want to use, that I know that it was solving my problems or issues. And also products that my audience would also want. So as a remote entrepreneur, I looked into insurance companies that you needed when you're traveling, or hacks for them to make sure that when they're working online, it's a lot easier. So apps maybe. And so I just made a list of all of these things, and I want you to do the same, right? What are you using now that you can be aligned with, and you know for a fact that you're using it, and also your audience would use too and find really helpful? So make sure you make a list of that. And another thing that I did was I looked at the people who are similar to my niche, who are landing brand sponsorships, and started pitching to those companies, right? So a lot of people are really when we're all scrolling through. Now this is going to go along with use social media ads to land sponsorships. So I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people are really annoyed by ads on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, all of these things. But for me, I love seeing ads, because the thing is, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok has this algorithm that they know exactly what kind of things that you're looking at online, what you're scrolling through, what you're liking, and they know what type of person and what kind of products you're going to be interested in. So whenever I scroll through those ads, I say, oh yeah, this is great, I'll use this. Oh shoot, I could also have my audience use this as well. So instead of those ads being cumbersome, like being annoying, I use it as part of like, how can I get those brands to be my sponsors? So then I start writing those down as well, and I have my assistant go through them, look for the emails, and then just start pitching, right? Before we get to that, so another thing that I want to tell you is, don't be afraid to pitch. Even if you have the smallest download, the main thing that I can tell you is that you want to look into this like a job interview, right? If you don't know what to do in a job interview and you finally find your dream job, how are you supposed to land it? So pitch to as many brands as you can if you want to do brand sponsorships. And even if you screw up, even if you get a ton of no's, it's okay, because you're going to keep getting better. Right now, I've had my podcast now for a little over 2 years, and I've literally pitched to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands. Like, I have a spreadsheet that we just keep adding brands to, emails to every single week that my assistant is doing. And I just pitch every single week, even now, So this is the thing, you're never going to get good at it until you keep doing it and you keep getting these no's, because every time I got a no, I would learn why they said no to me, and then I would always do a follow-up. And this is another thing I want to tell you, is follow-up is key, right? I'm going to tell you something. One of my sponsors right now that I'm doing long-term, I was literally emailing them, calling them, on the phone with them, back and forth for over 8 to 10 months, close to a year, before we finally landed the deal, right? And now they're a long-term partnership. If I had given up after the second or third email, I would not have landed this deal, and I would not have continuous income with this company. So don't give up. Never give up. Follow up. Follow 2, 3, 4 times, Obviously, don't be annoying, but just make sure that you're being really, you have this tenacity. If they could see that, then they're going to be like, wow, we need to work with this person. If that's how they are, just for their follow through, I can't even imagine what they're going to do for us when we're with them, when we're working with them. So make sure, right, you don't leave money on the table. Now, if you're a content creator, you will have a ton of ways to diversify your income aside from what I had just mentioned. There's probably things that I didn't even talk about that you can tell me in a little bit. Don't leave money on the table by not offering those different packages and add-ons to your client, right? So for example, you have your podcast. You can charge for pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. You can charge for the full episode, right? If you have your social media, you can charge for posting, having them post on your Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest. Pinterest pins, you can charge for that. You can charge for blog posts, link inclusions in your email marketing. You can even offer them consultations for how they can, maybe they also want to start a podcast. Maybe they want to know how to grow their social media, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things, there's different ways to diversify your income as a content creator specifically, because there's so many things that we're creating every day. Just think about it, like, why aren't you making money from all of it? Now, once you figure all of those things out, what you want to do, create a package from that. And, don't just offer a podcast, offer your blog, your Instagram, your emails, everything that you need to do, consultations, whatever it is. And if you guys have other ways that you're thinking about monetizing or are monetizing right now, I would love to learn that. Maybe I could use it myself. I always love hearing people's monetization types of, ways to do that, because I think it's really interesting. And I find that there's a lot of people that do it really creatively. So kudos to you if you're doing that. So once you learn what type of product you have reached out to the brands. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about is it's great you're on email, this brand is really interested with you, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, how do I negotiate? Now, I see this often, right? One of the biggest fears that I see is with content creators, with podcasters, is with their negotiations and asking for what they want. Now, you have to understand that in order for you to land the deal, you have to learn how to negotiate your packages and prices. And in order to do this, for me, one of the biggest ways that I've pretty much closed 80% of the negotiation deals that I've had with my packages and with my podcast is I did it through speaking on the phone. Right? So the reason why this was really effective to me, it's really interesting because I learned this tactic from Jacob Fu. He's actually one of the people that I interviewed on my podcast, and he and his wife have one of the most successful travel blogs in the world. And Jacob used to be a salesperson, and he taught me, you can't just do negotiations through an email. When you negotiate on the phone, people will hear your excitements. They will know that you're the right person for them because you are selling yourself. I know for a lot of people, the word sales and negotiating is really scary. But once again, if you are doing this as many times as you can, think about it like a job interview. Once you have your pitch right, you tell them what you can offer, how you're super valuable to them. You don't need to convince them anything. They're just going to be like, we want what you have. We want to be on your show. We want to make sure that we're the type of brand that is being placed on your show so that we can leverage your audience, right? And again, it also goes hand in hand with making sure that the brands you're working with is what your podcast is also in line with and what your audience wants. So you see how all of these things connect with each other, right? Now, so make sure that you have that conversation. I know it can be hard. Every single time I get a sponsor to reach out to me, or I reach out to a sponsor, I always say, do you have a time next week? Can we set up a schedule? And it's just 10, 15 minutes of call, but it makes a difference. And I'm telling you, I land 80% 80% of my deals now because I have been doing this so many times, guys. I can't even tell you how many phone calls, how many no's I got before I got to the 80%. So again, practice, practice, practice. You got to keep doing this. It's going to work, right? Now, how to take your podcast from hobby to profitable business. I feel like you got a little bit of a snippet to do that, making sure that you know what your audience wants, you know what type of product you can give them because that's what they're going to get from you. You know that it's going to be valuable for them, not just for you, because it has to be a win-win for everybody. And also how to reach out to brands, how to negotiate. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time to get into more details on how to properly pitch, creating like a really spectacular media kit, because that's another thing that will really make you stand out is your media kit, how to price yourself accordingly. That's another thing that most of you don't probably know. I don't follow the industry standard. That's why I can create income and make this sustainable and dealing with negotiations. And also I didn't get to talk about how to leverage being featured in different platforms and publications, like how I was featured in NBC, how I was on national television, how I was just featured within the last 3 weeks in Forbes. The first 3 months I had my podcast, I was featured in Refinery 29 as one of the best travel podcasts for women. So we're going to be, so there's not enough time. Sorry, guys. So what I want to show you guys is all of my secrets. I have an ebook called How to Create a Profitable Podcast, which is really great because that's what we're talking about today, right? And I'm going to show you how you can launch like a pro, grow your audience, find the right brands to work with, how to create standout media kits, creating your price sheets, negotiating, and so much more. So this is all of the things that I've learned how to do within the last 2 years. And the thing is, I didn't want to write this ebook before I knew I actually was living it. So even right now, I'm literally working and traveling and doing my podcast and talking to you guys. So this is not just me spewing out like, oh, you can make money doing this. Like, I'm literally living this. Like, this is my life and I'm doing it. And I'm going to share with you guys how you can do that too, whether you want to be a digital nomad, whether you want to just make money from what you love with your podcast or other content. So these are all of my secrets to how I was able to do this and live the life that I actually really wanted. Because before I had panic attacks every 4 months, and I'm sure some of you can relate to that too. And I don't want you to keep doing that to yourself and just be miserable all the time. Now, how to create a podcast, you can go to my website, howtocreateapodcast.com, to get the ebook, and it has bonus features, how to edit your show, and how to launch your podcast within 8 weeks. Some of you probably have your show already, but there's a ton of tips on there that will really help you take it from hobby to profitable business. Because again, if you are just doing this without creating income, it's just a glorified hobby, and you want to take it a step further from that, obviously, because you're watching me right now about how to create a profitable podcast and monetizing it in different ways. Now, one of the people that actually looked at this book, because I just literally put this out the last 2 weeks, is Marissa Anwar. She's the founder of Darling Escapes, and she just loved the book. And I'm like blown away that people are actually buying this before I even brought it out, like the last month. So now what I want you guys to do, an action that I want you to take, is I really want to learn how I can help you personally. So if you could take a few minutes later on to tell me your biggest single challenge with podcasting right now, it would mean so much to me. And if you do that, I'm going to say thank you by giving you 25% off of the book. If you answer a few quick questions, you could just go to howtocreateapodcast.com/virtually dash podcasting. And I just want to learn more from you and pick your brain. So that would be really great. So if you want to take a screenshot of that or anything, that would be wonderful. Now, You can find me on my website. There's two of them. If you want to learn how to do remote work and work remotely, like I'm doing right now, go to theoffbeatlife.com. If you want to learn how to create a podcast, go to howtocreateapodcast.com. I also have the Facebook, Instagram, and email. I'm everywhere. So thank you guys for being here, and I can't wait to see what kind of questions you have. So if you have any, ask away.
Hey, Debbie.
Hey, Itch.
I'm back.
Hey.
What up? What up? Awesome talk, by the way. I think the audience was incredibly engaged, and we actually do have a bunch of audience questions.
Awesome. I can't for some reason I can't see the chat right now.
Really?
So
Yeah, it should. Are you in the backstage chat maybe?
Maybe.
Do you see like on the right-hand side a chat section?
Yeah, I'm pressing it. And
events instead of backstage, you should be able to see the main chat.
Okay. No, I am on event.
Oh, that's weird.
Let me see. Yeah.
Well, that's totally fine. I can read you the questions that some people have put in the chat.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I think one of the Rhonda was one of the first people to ask a question. And this was back when you were talking a little bit about Patreon. And she wanted to know, do you recommend a low monthly subscription or an annual subscription on Patreon?
So I haven't personally done a Patreon, but it depends on, again, so this is the thing. It may sound really, oh, it's so like, it's not a lot of information. You have to ask your audience that, and also make sure that it's so redundant, but you have to know what they want first before you give them, again, like having polls, asking them questions. That's why I have that survey at the end, because I want to see what you guys want. So if you have an audience right now, if you don't, that's fine. But maybe if you don't do that, then maybe try it out and see as an option 1 and 2 and see whether they want one or the other. Could be an option too.
Awesome. We have Renata who asked, Debbie, how did the sponsors find you? Were you promoting a product on your podcast? And did you use hashtags and keywords?
Yeah, so within the first 3 months of my show, I was featured in Refinery 29. So if you know Refinery, it's like a huge online publication. And the 2 brands actually found me there. And then they looked at my website and my social media. And they were like, we're really confident that the type of audience that you have is what we need to tap into. So making sure you're visible in other ways, especially when you're just starting out, is so crucial to all of this, right? Because it's great that you have a podcast, but then what are they going to get from this? Like if you're being featured in Refinery 29, you have a killer website. This is another thing. See, there's so much I want to tell you guys. A lot of the brands that I speak to tell me all the time, like there's a lot of podcasters that we looked at and their website just sucks, but yours stood out to us because it's beautifully done. So make sure that everything that you create is kind of like a beautiful resume for them, because if your website sucks, how are they going to think the content that you're going to create for them is going to look, right?
Totally. So another question we have from the audience is actually people really resonated with the idea of, instead of just waiting sponsors to come to you, actually pitching sponsors. And so one thing a few people were curious about is, what does the standard template for one of these pitches look like?
Yeah, so there's different ways that you can do it. I always say make it short and sweet. I hate it when people pitch me, for example, to be on my podcast and it's like a long drawn out story. I'm like, that's great. Making sure that it's to the point. You pretty much tell them like what you can offer them, and it's not just about you. Like, I need you to be whatever. It's about you, what you can offer them, how you can make sure that their brand is going to get what they need. And we're actually going to be having that. If you go to howtocreateapodcast.com and sign up for the email list, we'll also share some tips on that as well, on how you can create really great pitching templates.
Incredible. Sabrina had a question having to do with, how do you allocate your time between, I guess, finding, pitching, persuading potential brands to sponsor the show versus creating content? What's the allocation there?
So I do the 80-20 rule with everything. It wasn't easy doing that in the beginning, especially when I didn't monetize it yet. So my rule is with everything 80-20, right? So when I first started my other businesses, it was always about creating. And then marketing was like 20%. So nobody knew me. So I would say, even if you just create one content or 4 contents a month, whether it's one episode a month, you need to make sure that you're marketing it more than you're creating. Because like I said, if I didn't get found on Refinery 29, if I'm not getting featured on these publications, or if I'm not being visible, no one's going to know I'm here. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn as a content creator, as a creative, is whatever I'm creating, I'm going to make it the best that I can. And then, but making sure that people actually know it's there, because what's the point of losing so much time doing that, or doing so much time with that, if no one sees it, right?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Jody had a really interesting question, and honestly, I'm really curious about this too. Is given like the niche that you're in with the offbeat life, do you get a lot of sponsored trips from companies and brands?
Yeah, so I'm here at a summit, and they took me here. I live in Florida. I'm not Florida. I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know where I am anymore sometimes. So I'm based in New York. Like, for example, right now I'm here with the summit, and they got me here. And then even like 3 weeks ago, it was in the Caribbean. So yes. But interestingly enough, when I first started, I wanted to travel, and now I'm just like, I just want to be home in my bed because it's exhausting. So, but it's great. You can't really complain when you get to do this and also get paid to do what you really love. And that's why I really want people to get to that next step with this.
Yeah. So, what do these travel sponsorships look like? Do they pay for your flights, hotels? What's included?
Yeah. So with me, in the beginning, it's okay for you to get free things, right? Because that's how you get, you need to have a resume that says I've done this, this, and this. But there's a certain point that I don't even care if you're giving me a free trip, because it's honestly, at the end of the day, it's just work. I need to get paid from it. So obviously they pay for your flight. This is what I ask for. It's like, I'm not going to pay for going there because I'm working. So they pay for my flight, for my stay, for whatever activities that I need to do there, and also pay for me. So aside from that, so even if it's all free, I don't care. Like, you also need to pay me for the time, because there's content that's being created while I'm there and then afterwards. And also remember that if you're here and you can't create content for other clients, you're actually losing money. So they need to make sure that they're paying you while you're doing this, because at the end of the day, this is a business. This is not a vacation.
Right. But to a lot of our audience, like, this feels like the dream job where you're getting paid to go to these incredible destinations where everything's covered.
Yeah.
I am actually genuinely curious. What has been your coolest sponsorship or the sponsorship, I guess, trip that you've enjoyed the most?
Yeah, so honestly, I think it's been to the St. Croix. Like last 3 weeks ago, I went to St. Croix. A hotel company sponsored me to go there, and I didn't even know like what St. Croix was about. So that really intrigued me. So I was like, wow. And it was really amazing, because I went to a place that I've never really, I mean, I knew it was there, but I didn't really know a lot about it. A lot of you probably won't know where it is in the map, neither do I still, but that's horrible to say. But it was just, it's things that I never would have experienced before. These are the types of things that I looked at with people online, like, this is not real. Like, this can't happen. But I'm here right now, like, showing you guys that this is definitely possible if you're doing it the right way.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, that was just out of personal curiosity.
Yeah.
We can kind of refocus on a little bit more on podcasting.
Yeah.
Kenny has a question, which is, how do you convince brands that podcasting is a powerful medium to advertise in when they're more used to, I guess, older forms of advertisement like print?
Yeah, so the great thing is there's a surge and like a huge interest in podcasting right now. So this is actually the time to start pitching to all of these companies because it's starting to really gain a huge momentum. So even 2 years ago when I first started and I was talking to brands and I was like, they were like, "Oh, you're a blogger, right?" I'm like, "No, I'm a podcaster." And then they would say, "What's a podcast?" But now people will know what that's about. So if you have the audience, if you have the ROI to back it up, if you have the numbers, even if you have the small numbers, but you have a specific niche and it's perfectly aligned with that brand, you can create income from this, right? And again, it's just practicing your pitch, right? And knowing what to say, how to take it back. And it's just, I'm telling you, it's practice, practice, practice. Think of it again as like you're going on an interview. And I would say pitch to brands, even if you don't really care, because you just want to keep practicing your pitch.
Great advice. Kenny has a follow-up question, which is, how do you now that say you've actually gotten a brand to offer you a deal, you've done the advertisement. Now, how do you, I guess, leverage analytics to show the ROI and like show the value that you're providing to the brand?
Yeah. So the great thing is everything you're putting out there now, there's like analytics for them, right? So there's Google Analytics, even Instagram has analytics. If you go to your podcast host, it will tell you how many downloads you have. So those things are super easy. And I always make sure, and I tell people this, to add that to your media kit, right? To your media kit template, you have your ROI there, making sure that they know what you can deliver, because that's another great way for you to actually land that deal, because you can do something and they're going to see that.
Awesome. And I guess we'll just wrap up with one last question before we move on to the next talk, which is, Renata, besides being bold and brave, what is one tangible piece of advice that helped you leave your full-time job and land a podcasting career? For Renata, she specifically says, leaving behind the safety net of benefits and income is really scary to her. And how do you overcome that?
Yeah. So the thing about me is I don't think of it as a risk. What I'm doing now, for me at least, I don't know if anyone else will resonate with this, but it was more of a risk for me to stay at something that I absolutely hated than going for something that I knew that I absolutely loved. And that's when it really clicked for me. And when I took that leap and I gave myself a timeline, I didn't just go into this not making money. When I left my job, I was already creating income from my podcast. I had savings, so I knew I needed to prepare for it. I am not telling you guys, please don't leave your job if you don't have income in some way or form, because you also don't want to be looking at your bank account and nothing is coming. You don't want to be at that stage. So make sure you're prepared to do this. Yes, you have to be bold and you have to take a risk, but you also have to be really realistic. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't tell you, like, yeah, go for it, quit your 9 to 5. I'm like, that's fucking BS. Sorry for cursing, but you need to be prepared to do this as well. So yes, I saved money. I made sure I was making income from my content and other things as well when it comes to content creation. And that's how I prepared for it.
Incredible. And I know I said that was the last question, but Cornell, I think, has a really quick question that I think would be valuable to a lot of people, which is, when pitching a company, who's usually the final decision maker?
What do you mean?
I guess who's the person who makes the call? Yes, we're in for the sponsorship, or no, we're not. Like, I guess he's trying to get more at, who should you pitch to in a company that's, I guess, kind of big?
Okay, get it. So when I have an assistant right now, that one of the things that they do when I do this is just to find who the media person is from this company. So it also always has to be the PR or the media person in the company, most likely like the PR person, because that's who's in charge of hiring content creators to, and then they also have budgets they're allocating, and you're making sure that you're going in at the right time to do that as as well. But usually it's the media, the PR people, not the PR, the media people who are going to be talking to you about this. And it's usually when you're on the call with them, whoever responds back to you is the person who's going to say yay or nay. So that's really who you're going to be going and really corresponding with most of the time, or all of the time.
Awesome. Awesome. Debbie, hey, thank you so much for your time. This conversation was incredible. This was so helpful. Everybody, if you enjoyed Debbie's talk, definitely give like a virtual round of applause in the chat. You know her Instagram, it's the Offbeat
Yes,
Life. Those
yes.
are all her social links. Definitely reach out, say thanks. All right, with that, we will end this talk. I'm gonna go backstage and grab our keynote speaker, Jordan Paris, who is waiting for us. He is the host of the Growth Mindset University. We are so excited to have Jordan. Him and I are going to have about a 45-minute interview, and that'll be starting up just in 5 minutes. So stay tuned, guys. We'll also be announcing the grand prize winner of the Descript Producer Plan raffle.
Perfect.
All right, see you in a little bit.
Bye, guys.